we're gonna get kicked out if I issue within 5 years.
Just like to see some, like, Jack was finish these projects.
Yeah, no, we have to do that.
They have, yeah.
But we are going to be kicked out at some time. Or kicked out money-wise. They're gonna raise it to $5,000 a year or something like that.
Well, I think we never ever thought that.
Thank you for being here with us today. All of our board members are present. And first off, we would like to begin with Pocatello High School mascot presentation provided by Lisa Delonis, principal.
Be a little closer to your mic, Mr. Watson.
Let me take this thing off.
Good morning. Oops, can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, Superintendent Howell and members of the school board. I would like to take a moment as principal of Pocatello High School to share my thoughts with you. I have been a proud Pocatello Indian for 40 years. When I was a young girl, I remember the overwhelming feeling of pride and adoration whenever I saw the Pocatello High School Indianettes perform. I reveled in the goosebumps that covered my body as the music to traditionals built, then finally ended with the crescendo of the arrow being broken. I grew up knowing that breaking that arrow meant we were ready to fight for our school, and I dreamed of becoming an Indianette. Finally, my time to be an Indianette arrived, and I was privileged to learn from some of the Shoban women how to make my headdress, the headdress I would wear throughout my time as an Indianette. I was living my dream. I was so proud to be a Pocatello Indian. This meant taking on the responsibility of living up to what it meant to be an Indian. Some of those traits included always representing myself, my family, and my school with honor, always being kind, respecting others, striving for excellence, inclusion, and more. I fell in love with and married another Pocatello Indian, and we raised two amazing kids who became Pocatello Indians. My daughter was an Indianette, and my son played football for PHS. Pocatello High School was a family tradition before me and has continued through me. Now, my grandkids proudly tell others they will be attending PHS. The phrase, red and blue runs through my veins, is certainly true in my family. Being an Indian has been a part of my identity for a very long time. It has been an honor to be a Pocatello Indian. This sentiment is not unique to me or my family. Pocatello High School is 128 years old. For 3/4 of a century, it was the only school in town. Literally thousands of students, staff, parents, and other community members have felt the spirit of PHS and proudly call themselves Pocatello High School Indians. When I became principal of PHS, I committed myself to helping my students feel that same sense of pride and identity. I wanted to build on the great legacy that already existed and make sure the school was honoring its mascot and living up to its motto of Pocatello High School, where everybody is somebody. Occasionally, I would be asked about the Indian mascot, and I would honestly reply that it was an honor to be the Indians and that we were doing all that we could to be respectful and to represent Indians in a positive way. Our intent was good. I had a paradigm shift after I decided to do some research. I read articles, listened to interviews of Native Americans speaking about this issue, spoke frankly with Native American students, parents, and other tribal members I knew. Then last year, a school-wide training gave me the clarity to understand that our good intentions were not enough. I asked the teacher to share a presentation with our faculty regarding her training in equity in education. During this training, we learned about the importance of distinguishing between one's intent and one's impact. We learned that one's intent could be pure and good and still have a negative impact. And we learned that the impact is what matters most. Sadly, when we are caught with a misalignment between our intentions and our impact, we focus on how we feel rather than how we made others feel. We try to defend and justify our feelings and our intent rather than owning up to and acknowledging our impact. Pocatello High School's use of Indians as her mascot is a case of intent not aligning with impact. I can assert with all sincerity that our intent has been to represent Indians in a respectful and honorable manner. Over the years, as we have gained more cultural insight, understanding, and sensitivity, as we have listened to the voices of Native American individuals and organizations, and engaged in discussions with our local tribe, we have changed and discontinued practices that we learned were disrespectful, perpetuated negative stereotypes, or misrepresented a group of people. While we have not been perfect, we have always had good intentions. Unfortunately, our intentions, regardless of merit, are limited. We have many Native American students who do not feel comfortable attending our assemblies because they are uncomfortable with the Indianettes' performances of traditionals. We also have no influence over the actions of our rival schools. During my 6 years as principal, I have learned of rival schools holding pep assemblies where scalped Indians lay dead in coffins. I've seen posters reading, "Let's scalp the Indians," and t-shirts with exaggerated caricatures of snarling Indians and more. Simply by being the Indians, we have created opportunities for others to mock, attack, disrespect, denigrate, and dehumanize Native Americans. We can no longer in good conscience say that we are honoring Native Americans. We may have intended to, but our impact proves otherwise. Our school motto, where everybody is somebody, means nothing if we knowingly ignore the needs and feelings and voices of the very people we claim to represent. When issues of race or culture or the struggle of any population is brought to the lens of others, it's easy to talk about how it makes us feel, especially when we are the decision makers needing to make a decision. But it is a decision that must be made. Superintendent Howell, school board members, it is time. We must honor the Pocatello. We must honor the Pocatello Indians by retiring our mascot. Now is the time for change. I understand that change can be difficult. Some PHS alum will worry about losing an important piece of school history and tradition. But we can rally behind the fact that change itself is a long-standing part of what makes Pocatello High School amazing. A recent PHS graduate, Ryan Murley, wrote, quote, "At Pocatello High School's foundation in 1892, women were not allowed to vote. From 1892 to 1898, over 100 black Americans were lynched every year. In 1914, the school was burnt to the ground only to be rebuilt. Pocatello High School is no stranger to change, and while change always feels uncomfortable, past changes have been met with strength and confidence. A mascot change is no different," end quote. I agree with Ryan. A mascot change will be met with strength and confidence. Many of our past and current student body members have expressed their support for mascot change. The staff at Pocatello High School supports this request. Most importantly, our local tribe leadership supports this request. It has taken us a very, very long time, but we are finally listening to the voices that matter, the voices directly impacted by Native American mascots. Along with this request, we would ask that the board take this action swiftly and without seeking public input. We believe that changing our mascot is the right thing to do. We believe asking for public input sends a message that doing the right thing is open for discussion. If making this change is the right thing to do, it should not be open for discussion. The public may agree, they may disagree. Either way, public opinion does not change the fact that this is the right thing to do. If we were discussing desegregating schools today, we would not hesitate to act, and we should not hesitate now. We would not allow the public to influence our decision, and we should not seek that influence now. We would simply make the change because it would be the right thing to do, and we should make this change now. Let us be on the right side of history and make this change unilaterally. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have members of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes here to speak? No? So, move on. Dr. Howell, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. In your packet today, we have a draft proposed timeline as Mrs. Delanis has requested that the board take swift action. However, we recognize that the board may have a determination to proceed in a little bit different manner. The draft timeline in your packet today, though, reflects a potential change as early as next week. Now, with that, the board could have some discussion at next week's meeting. We can continue to take public input over the course of the week. And then you can see that in there is an opportunity just after a board meeting, should the board make a determination at some point to retire the mascot. And again, this timeline could be adjusted, but just based upon what we would understand the process to be, is that we would publish a journal in the publish an article or editorials in the Idaho State Journal, Idaho News, and other publications, letters to the editor and Idaho State Journal, radio and television interviews, potential Facebook announcement, and a press conference. We would see too that we could launch a brand identity campaign and potentially look for a new mascot. That could take place over the course of about a month's time. and ultimately narrow those down to 2 or 3 for the board to consider, and then take action at a subsequent meeting, again, potentially into October, November, whatever it is that the board desires, if they would like to pursue this course of action. Ultimately, we could culminate this in a grand celebration in August, September of 2021 as we open the new building at Pocatello High School, and it could just all coincide together. So that is our tentative plan that we presented to the board. Again, it is a proposal. It is at the board's discretion, but it gives you an idea of what we can do, how we will do it, if there is a time to do it.
So, sorry, my internet's not working, but, so if you were to retire that, according to this timeline, the mascot, then they would go a whole year with no mascot. Is that correct?
Mrs. Delanis, would you like to come up and address that a little bit with me? Essentially, to answer your question, Mrs. Craner, yes, we would have some time to make the necessary adjustments into the facilities themselves, wherever there is an Indian logo or mascot or name, uniforms throughout the building and so forth. Mrs. Delanis, do you want to comment any further on that?
If the decision is made to retire the mascot, and we open up a process where we take, suggestions for a new mascot, and we, vet those and have some sort of a process for narrowing those down and choosing one, and let's say that we were able to complete that by the end of October or November, within a short period of time, it would take some time for us to get some great artwork created, to get new T-shirts printed, to go through our inventory of uniforms and all the things that need to be switched over. So we may sort of have a temporary, a few months of, this is what we're going to be, or this is what we now are, but we may not have any of that artwork or memorabilia or gear that would reflect that for a little bit of time until we had work done up. But then I think I think, we could still say the new mascot is whatever it is, and that's what it is, and start somewhat implementing it in. But it would be nice to have kind of a big kickoff and officially kick it off in the fall of next year. But I still think you can, use whatever the new mascot is for the remainder of this school year.
Okay, and then to implement that, there would be a pretty significant cost, am I correct?
I would guess so. We've been very conscientious about this subject as a school. We have limited the things that we've put the Indians logo on that are permanent things, such as uniforms. Like our football uniforms haven't said Indians on them since I've been principal. Uniforms that we don't use, that we change frequently. If you get new uniforms every year or two in a particular sport, they may have had Indians, but they would rotate out in a couple of years anyways. Our gym floors would need to be redone. There is not significant signage in our school that is going to have to be replaced, but there will be some financial cost, yes.
Okay. Now,
So,
This-
Mrs. Craner, and I'd ask, just last week as we started discussing this a little more deeply, I asked Mrs. Delanis to just walk around the building to determine what it was that, as far as what changes would need to be made, and then she could present that list to me and to Mr. Reed, and we would take that into consideration as to where it would work in timelines to, say, for example, resurface and repaint a gym floor or something. And so we will have that eventually, but we just don't have it right now.
right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because I want to make it clear, this proposal is the first the board has seen this.
Correct.
The board, in fact, I didn't even see anything about the name change till last Friday. And I do have a question. You request that the public not have input on this. But did you get input from your staff? Did you have a meeting with them and get input
I
from
met
them?
with we've discussed the controversy over the mascot over the course of, time since I've been there, right? I approached the staff really for the first time at our opening faculty meeting and said that the tribe had sent me a letter and had wanted to address this issue, and that my intent was to ask for the mascot to be retired. I outlined my rationale with that with my staff and asked for their feedback. I should let you know that over the course of the last year and a half, I've had several staff members and students say that they cannot, that they would no longer support, the Indian mascot. I've had them constantly pester me over the summer. What are we going to do? We shouldn't be starting another school year with this as our mascot. What are you going to do? And so when I came to my staff, I'm not going to say that it wasn't a complete surprise that, oh my goodness, it's here. We get busy with COVID and everything else that's been preparing to do to begin the school year. But I think I can say pretty confidently that it has not been a surprise to them. I asked them to consider. I said, you don't have to be where you are, where I am in my thinking. I'm not asking you to agree 100% with me, but I'm asking you to be completely honest. I want to represent you as accurately and honestly as I can, and I don't want to say that my staff supports this if my staff does not support this. I will say half my staff supports this, a quarter of my staff support this, and so we had a process at the school where teachers could reply to me, give me their feedback, and it was completely anonymous, and I've had zero staff members opposed. I'm all of my coaches, my 100% of my staff. I will say that they're in various degrees and stages of understanding and mourning, and it has been emotional. It's difficult to let go of something that you have loved, that has been a part of your life. But as we have journeyed through learning about why Native American mascots are so damaging and harming to Native Americans, and the complexity of this issue, and it's been a difficult journey to sort of accept that's something that you would love. Is also harming people. And so that has not been an easy thing to do. And so to speak for every individual staff member and say that everybody is at the level of understanding that I am would be inaccurate, because they have not gone out and visited the tribal council with me. They have not interviewed parents and tribal members with me. They have not engaged in the level of deep research that I have. They've only listened to me share what I have experienced and learned. And that is a different level of understanding than experiencing it and learning it firsthand. But I can stand here today and say that 100% of my staff and my coaches are supportive of this change.
I guess what I'm getting to here is that what you've experienced there with your staff, we as a board will experience too with a community who's going to have the very same types of feelings, and things. And I guess if we choose to go this route, our task is to help people understand the reasoning, behind this. And so I feel that it's not, I don't think you would have made that decision just by yourself, on your own without consulting with your staff, So.
And I understand what you're saying. My point to making the decision quickly and without public input is not to say that we shouldn't educate our public or to say that we shouldn't share reasons why a decision is made. It is to, it's my thought that, doing the right thing shouldn't be open for debate, and I believe it's the right thing to do. Not everybody's going to believe that, and you are certainly welcome to, whatever process that you feel is best. I mean, that's why you're here. I also have watched, I don't know how many people have watched, I have watched because this has been rolling around in my brain for the last 2 or 3 years, that this is coming, that this is something we're going to have to address. And, you know, I watched most recently as Teton went through this, and it is ugly, and it is difficult on Native American students in my school to watch Teton go through this. It was difficult for them because I'm asking them, what comes out, what people are willing to say often is not taken into consideration all those that are going to be impacted by reading or hearing the words that are said. And so, you know, maybe that's faulty thinking of mine, that if we make a swift, if a swift decision is made, that it'll minimize some of that negativity and that ugliness that my students will endure. But that's the birth of my concern, is protecting my students as much as possible from what could potentially be a very ugly and heated debate.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
No, her points are well taken, so thank you.
Are you done?
Nothing else from me, Mr. Chairman, on this particular item today.
Okay. We'll move on with the agenda.
So if the board would like to provide some direction, though, whether or not we can just look at this next week in the regular meeting, and at that time you can make a determination whether or not you'd like to take action. There could be someone come forward that would propose that, or perhaps table action until some other opportunities exist. As Mrs. Craner is in her thinking, I believe, maybe a little bit longer period of time. That's totally, again, at the board's discretion, and you can provide us that direction next week.
So, I should ask this, I guess, when Mr. Lawrence was up here. So what I'm understanding is she wants us to make a decision to retire, but not necessarily to come up with a mascot just yet.
Correct, Mr. Facer. So at any point, if the board were to make that decision to retire the mascot, there would be a process up to another month or so where suggestions for input on the new mascot would be taken. And with that, Mrs. Delanis and Mrs. Fisher have done a nice job preparing what the elements would be for that suggestion, whether it ties to local heritage, whether other districts within Idaho or our region have the same mascot, and so forth. So there would be a series of questions that would have to be answered, so it couldn't just be kind of willy-nilly, you know, silly, whatever kind of names. And so there would be a process behind that.
Can we stop this
Yeah.
conversation right now? Let's move on, and we take up this conversation after we hear from the audience.
Okay.
That-
So actually, Mr. Chairman, we have a continuous improvement plan. We-
I know, but that's the next one.
Yeah.
And then.
Then, okay,
I'd much
all
rather
right,
talk
you
about
bet.
that time.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Orr? Mr. Orr, review the continuous improvement plan for the 2021 school year. Ms. Craney and Ms. Pettit.
So maybe to clarify, Mr. Chairman, so we'll make this presentation and then have the public comment?
Yes, it's
Yes.
right afterwards.
Okay, all right.
I think we just wanted to hear public comment before we take any action.
We're not taking action
Well, I
today.
know
No
that
action.
before
Before
make
we
a motion
discuss.
for that.
There's no action to be taken.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So it's time for our, the update of our annual continuous improvement plan for 2021, and I believe you have a copy of that in your packet this morning. With your permission, we'll just kind of walk through the various elements of that plan and then would entertain any questions that you might have. The first page of the plan is really just an overview of the district, which includes our mission and our vision and provides the demographic analysis of the school district. And you can see from 1920 to 2021, our demographics district-wide are pretty much the same that they have been the last number of years. The following section after that really just articulates the community involvement in the development of this plan and how feedback is solicited. It identifies that this plan is posted on our district's website, and the community is able to provide any pertinent feedback. And it articulates how each of our schools have parent advisory committees, which are also opportunities for parents to provide input. The next section really gets into the literacy plan, and Mrs. Craney will talk about that. And then following that will be a description of our career advising program, the college and career advisory and mentoring program, and Mrs. Pettit will comment on that. And then the last section I'll come back to, which articulates the metrics that we take a look at in the development of our plan.
All right, so on the bottom of page 2 starts the literacy intervention program, and so we had very few changes to make to this, and so we just had a few minor tweaks, and so this was very much similar to what we provided last year. You will know that if students are strategic on the IRI, they receive 30 additional hours of instruction. If they are intensive on the IRI, and those are kindergarten through 3rd grade students, they will receive an additional 60 hours at a minimum of intervention. And so what it states in here are the different universal screening assessments that we use, the protocol interventions that are used for all of our students in those grade levels, and you'll see those in the tables that are there. It also mentions in there that we do not have an extra 30 hours within the school day for our kindergarten students, or 60 hours within the school day for our kindergarten students to receive intervention during the school day. But so what we do is we have them come for an extended amount of time. And so through this, and you'll note that in the budget, that we are able to provide additional kindergarten teachers to provide interventions over and above, which means full day for our neediest learners in kindergarten. So the program in there shows how this is aligned to the comprehensive literacy plan. And that's the section there on section 5. Taking us up to
College and career. So our college and career program hasn't changed a whole lot in the last couple of years. We use a hybrid model that, so we have college and career advisors, 2 in each high school, and then the middle schools, we have 2, and they're shared between the 4 middle school students. We begin our college and career advising as early as 6th grade, and it goes into full swing when they hit 9th grade. So overall, it's been working very, very successfully. We have more students last year that accessed their advanced opportunities monies and visited high school or visited colleges than we have in the past. So it just continues to grow.
Right after the college and career advising section, you'll see where the metrics and demographics for the school district are reported. Of course, last year was a very unusual ending to the school year, and so we were not able to test on the ISAT in the spring nor give the IRI. And so what you'll see there are the benchmarks from 1920 that we had identified, and we simply rolled those same benchmarks over for the current school year. Beginning with the graduation rate, we're always very proud of that at 91%. And you can see various performance on 8th grade, 6th grade, IRI at the bottom of that page. We did note on here that in looking at the data, we felt like that we were on track to meet benchmarks for last school year. And we noted specifically that for iStation and grades K through 3, our performance was on track to meet or exceed those benchmarks, and that kindergarten specifically demonstrated significant increases from the same month the previous year. Following that, you see the percentage of students involved in advanced opportunities in the district from 44.5% in 18-19 to 49% in 19-20, and a benchmark this year we've established at 55%. They requested that we report on some CTE metrics this year. That data was a little bit hard to get a hold of this year, so we did our best to accurately represent the percent of high school students who graduate with an industry recognized certification, and then we'll be more in tune, I guess, with collecting that data this year as we move forward. And then you'll also see the percent of CTE students who pass CTE recognized workplace readiness programs. That percentage is very accurate. The following page is college and career, and I don't know if Mrs. Pettit wants to comment specifically on any of these, but you'll see it starts off with the number of high school students who graduate with an associate's degree or a CTE certificate. Actually, that number for 19-20 represents more CTE certificates really than an associate's degree. We always have a high percentage of students who complete their learning plans moving out of 8th grade into high school. You'll see those numbers there. The go-on rates, which these are reported on the state board's website, but you'll see that they're reflected here so the community can take a look at those pretty easily. And then they ask us to identify some district performance metrics. You can see that we've identified 2 of those. The first is the percentage of 11th and 12th grade students who will access Fast Forward and Advanced Opportunities funding. And you'll see that increase from 71% to 77% with a benchmark going forward at 80%. And then the percent of 3rd grade students proficient on ELA ISAT, again, we weren't able to test last spring, but you'll see that our benchmark is established at 57.5%.
Okay, next in there is the proposed literacy budget, and you'll see that teachers and certified staff are combined in there, and we're able to support interventionists at all of our schools except for Idaho and Gate City through Title I funds, and so this does help us provide an interventionist at Gate City and Idaho through the literacy funds. It also provides kindergarten teachers to provide that full day for our neediest learners there in kindergarten. So we were doing really well last year, and really want to see this year. Hopefully we'll make it through the year so that we can be watching those numbers there in kindergarten with the new program. Paraprofessionals are also supported through this, and a lot of our paraprofessionals are used to not work with our neediest learners, but to work with other learners in the classroom so that the teachers can then work with some of the neediest learners. So we do have that budgeted for in this plan, as well as supplies and technology, including iStation. We purchase iStation as an intervention tool. The state pays for it as an assessment tool for the IRI. In kindergarten through 3rd grade, we use it kindergarten through 5th grade as an intervention. And so they take assessments monthly, and then they are able to have a path created for them, an intervention path. And then professional development is always key, we feel, to success. And so through our literacy money, we're able to have some funds go towards professional development, which provides collaboration time, it provides training on using iStation, analyzing data, trainings for intervention, and we're able to budget that through our literacy funds. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Put a lot on it. Thank you. One more. Okay. It's time for public comment. And I should, I have 9 of them, so I will give you all 5 minutes apiece, or less, 5 minutes. And Renee will be your timekeeper, and I order Dr. Elizabeth Red Perkham is first.
Hello, members of the board, thank you. Hello, members of the board, thank you for hearing me today. And I want to thank the principal of Pocatello High School for her very thoughtful comments. I am here today as an educator and a parent of a student in this school district. I am Director of American Indian Studies at Idaho State University. As such, I have the privilege of teaching many of your students once they graduate. Excuse me. I'm Director of American Indian Studies at Idaho State University, and as such, I have the privilege of teaching many of your students after they have graduated. You're going to hear arguments today from people who will say that the Indian mascot is a way to honor Native Americans, that it is, that there is a cost associated with it, and that it is tradition. I think that the principal of Pocatello High School has done a very good job of arguing why, even though something may be tradition, that it may not need to continue to be tradition. I think that the principal has also done a very good job of arguing that though the intention may be to honor Native Americans, the reality is that it does not. The mascot does not honor Native Americans. You're also going to hear people talking about the cost associated. Well, I want to talk about a different kind of cost. I want to talk about the educational cost of maintaining a Native American mascot. 20 years of research has shown that there is a negative impact, not only to Native American students, but to non-Native American students. Non-Native American students are given stereotypes, they have misinformation perpetuated, and this actually causes them to misunderstand the complex relationship of Native American history and United States history. As an educator of these students, I am on the front lines of combating that misinformation. I can tell you that their education is insufficient and is informed in part by the stereotypes that they receive from having a Native American mascot. The damage to Native American students is even deeper. Those students are given the idea that the school is not welcoming to them. There is a hostile learning environment created. And that creates a sense that they do not belong in education, that education is not for them. This means that they are less likely to feel a sense of belonging in the school. And that in turn is directly related to whether they persist in high school, graduate from high school, or go to college. So I would like to invite you to think about the educational cost. This is an institution of learning. The mission is to teach, and that should be inclusive for all students. It is time to retire the mascot. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Doctor. Next up is Joan Reed. Yep, there you go.
My name is Joan Merrill Reed. I was a teacher at Franklin Junior High for 38 years. And I'm also an alumni of Pocatello High School, class of 59, and I was a cheerleader. And I understand what the previous speakers were talking about and the impact that it has on people. But I don't think that we can get rid of all of our traditions and try something different. We need to educate. I think that is absolutely correct. We've gotten rid of Askiawa, we've gotten rid of the headdresses, and I was a cheerleader in class of 59, and we've gotten rid of a lot of things. I still think that we can honor this tradition using Indians and also educate everybody. And I think in the end result, this is political correctness gone amok, and I think that we need to stop at some point. What are we going to do? What are we going to change next? Are we going to take down the Chief Pocatello, or the old Chief Theater? Are we going to get rid of that? Are we going to change the name Pocatello? Are we going to change the name Bandit County? I don't think so. I think this has to end. I think we can educate, and I think we can continue to use the Indians, the Pocatello Indians. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Next, Billy Johnson. Billy here? Okay.
Smoke has gotten to me. My name is Billy Johnson. Greetings, School Board, District 25 trustees. I'd like to also offer some public comments here. This fall marks 32 years since my very first Pocatello High School t-shirt. It said "Loud, Proud Pokey Pep Band Member," and it had a screen print of a Native American with a headdress. I played the trombone, so the loud came easy, and it only took seconds on the campus of Pocatello High School before the proud came even easier. The culture and the elements that sought to honor Native Americans touched me for my entire life. I went on to be the student body president of Pocatello High School for the 1990-91 school year. I got the winning kill in the state championship volleyball game for Pocatello High School's lone first place trophy. And at the end of that event, I was the one in the nucleus of that celebration of hugs and squeals and utter pokey pride. I can tell you today that was the best day of my life. I read the editorial in the Idaho State Journal from Kevin Callahan, who's the acting chairman of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, noting that they sent the letter to schools in Idaho with concerning mascots. In his piece, Mr. Callahan said, and I quote, "From a tribal perspective, what was once acceptable is no longer acceptable today." And I understand some administrators met with the tribe's leadership last Friday. It is important to me that I listen to what they and other tribes in our country have to say. It's important to me that you listen to what they have to say. Those words I just spoke a second ago ring loud and clear. What was once acceptable is no longer acceptable today. I imagine you will get all of the high school glory days stories like mine. I loved playing the traditionals on my trombone. I loved earning tomahawk patches for my volleyball sweatshirt. I love that I was part of something so special that has lasted for over 100 years. But I am now processing how something so dear to me has contributed to undercurrents of bigotry, and it has been outright racist. Those are harsh words, and I'm able to say them now because I've gone on a journey through research and personal education. It has been an intentional and willful exercise in learning that I hope others in this community will endeavor to do. The question before you isn't, should we retire the Indians' mascot? That is way too simple. The question before you is the Indians' mascot racist, offensive, or harmful? And then the follow-up question is, do we care? I think the stories you heard from Mrs. Delanis indicate an answer to question number one, along with the personal stories of many across our nation and developing research on racism that comes with the understanding of human beings as we live together more and more each day. Our intended means of honor is not that anymore. The mascot is racist, offensive, and harmful. And so now we're left with, do we care? It isn't Pokey's mascot that will continue to honor Native Americans who are our friends and neighbors, but rather it is listening to them. And if we aren't listening to them, one must question if honor really is our intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Next, Brenda Jester.
I'll pass.
Okay. Next, Shannon Ainsley? Ansley? It's an N, okay.
Thank you for listening. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew, I assumed that Yvette Toole and Randy L. Teton were going to speak this morning, but some of you, if you were watching the weather map last night, you would have seen that the storm that we experienced here was much more severe north of us, including Fort Hall and part of the reservation. The entire government there is shut down today. Like I said, I work for them, so I have received notices that that everyone is supposed to be home. They experienced a lot of downed trees and power lines, and because Randy L. and Yvette are their primary PR and communication with the tribes, I'm guessing, I'm not sure that that's why they're not here. So I wanted all of you and the audience to know that as well. And I'll be short and sweet. I support the name change. I honor each one of you who went out to the tribes and met with them personally and have taken the time and the effort to hear their perspective, and also, as Billy and the principal said, have taken the time to educate yourselves on the real history of the West, and not the Western history that we have all learned in our upbringing, because they're two different things. So again, I honor you for what you're trying to do, and thank you for that very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Next, Gene Waters.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. As I listened to the comments that were previously made, it's apparent that there's been a lot of discussion to remove the name Indians from Pocatello High School. My comments may not mean much, because those that are bound to change the name won't stop at this to have it done. But I have a few words to say. Those in favor of changing the tradition of Pocatello High School by demanding a change in name are misguided, to say the least. These people will not stop until they have removed every aspect of American history. I am perplexed why those people can look at the name Indians and ask, any of you have felt the name, that name is derogatory and racist. We are here to appease those who label others bigots and themselves are intolerant. These people should be examine their morals and not look at a name and call it racist and demand a name change. I was born a resident of Pocatello, attended Pocatello High School. My son graduated from Pocatello High School. I played football as an Indian. My wife's daughter was a cheerleader. That doesn't mean any of us who have attended this school are of an American Indian heritage. Many, many, many have attended and do have that heritage. I believe all of us are proud to call ourselves a Pocatello High School Indian. I hope to do this for years to come. I oppose changing the name to appease a small group demanding change. It negatively impacts taxpayers with the school district, and it is important for this Board of Trustees to preserve all of school's history and dismiss unreasonable demands. You are in charge of preserving history. Make the right choice and defend it. I have just two questions for the board, and maybe you can answer them.
We cannot answer.
You can't?
No.
Okay.
But we'll
Thank
take you, yeah. Okay, next up, Deborah Baker.
Thank you for hearing me. I came here with the same feeling as this gentleman that just spoke until I listened to the other people. And I drove school bus for this district for 15 years. My route was out in Fort Hall, and I really began to love the Fort Hall people. And if this is hurting them, I don't want to hurt them. But I really do think public opinion should be heard. And if we're going to change it, I think that Native American people should find a name for this, not us. That's all I have.
Thanks, Deborah. And let's see which one. Grant Barshi? Did I say that right? Sorry if I didn't.
Yeah, you did a good job, Archie.
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to comment today. I'm quite surprised that since the tribe was on the representatives from the tribe were on the agenda today that says they were going to make a presentation that no one was here. I think that's unfortunate. I understand that this was initiated by a letter and much input by the tribe representatives. I'm not sure that this is an important issue to the majority of the Native Americans in our area. I don't think that's a given. When Mrs. Delana spoke, she became emotional about the name change. And I think that's fitting because it is an emotional issue. I see you have a police officer here today. I don't know if you usually have a police officer at your meetings, but this is an emotionally charged issue. And I don't think that it's an issue that the board can push forward to the community in a period of 2 weeks with limited input. I think that, like Mrs. Delana said, Pokey High was the only high school in Pocatello for 3/4 of a century. This has become part of our culture. This is our history as well. They're intermingled. And I don't think that you can unilaterally go to the community and do this. The community has to be brought along. This needs to be an extensive process for the community to buy into it. I don't think it's appropriate myself. I don't think we ought to change it. But if we're going to, it needs to be done with a broader consensus. I think Mrs. Delana's comments that we should just do this in a 2-week period by fiat, that we know best, does not serve the community well. So I would hope that the board would take those thoughts into consideration. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you, Grant. And the last one, Mary Ann McGrory.
Thank you. I ended my week and I'm starting my week with you guys. I am not originally from Pocatello, and so I don't have the historical vested interest or connection to the name. But I have watched a lot of the comments on Facebook and listened here. And it seems that the idea that the name A, Pocatello, and B, Indians was to honor the natives who were found living here, had their own culture before the American European descent made it to this area. And so I did a little research, and I just found out that Pocatello was not the chief's name. His name was, and I apologize for not pronouncing this right, but his name was Tanzosha. Pocatello is a name a white man gave to him. In 1918, John Rees published a list of Idaho places called Idaho Nomenclature. His derivation of Pocatello included po, meaning road, ka, meaning not, and tello, to follow. Rees offered the meaning he does not follow the road, referring to the chief's stealthy habits and thieving raids. That's a positive word there, thieving raids. An earlier reference to Pocatello occurred in 1859 when Superintendent of the U.S. Wagon Road met Chief Pocatello and arranged his release from U.S. custody. A current linguist, Sven Lidjeblad, believed that Lander's encounter with Chief Pocatello was the first reference to the name. Lidjeblad refuted John Rees's syllabic derivation of the name, reasoning that Rees had simply connected unrelated Shoshone roots. He concluded that Pocatello was not even a Shoshone word. Chief Pocatello's daughter, Jeanette Lewis, confirmed that the name had no meaning in the Shoshone language and that the chief referred to himself as Tanzashoa, meaning buffalo robe. Just a little bit of history there. So that's kind of my personal perspective. As the PEA president, I will not take a position other than to say that both the Idaho Education Association and the National Education Association have it included in their resolutions, which are the guiding principles of both organizations, that Native American mascots should not be used. If this comes from the tribe, then we should honor that request and to discontinue that use. It is not our place to tell another group of people whether they should feel offended or should not feel offended. If they feel offended by this use of this mascot, the history and intention of it doesn't matter. It's the impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, whereas our representatives from the Shoshone tribes could not make it today, we do have a letter from the council, and I think Mrs. Delanis could present that on their behalf, at least for today, if that would be acceptable, since we did have them on the agenda.
Okay.
So this is the letter that we received from the tribe. The Shoshone Tribes is urging the Pocatello School District and the Pocatello High School personnel to reconsider the name and mascot of Pocatello High School. The tribes has a long history of both support and opposition to using Indians' name, mascot, and Native American imagery. However, at this time, the tribes support changing the use of Indians as associated with Pocatello High School. The tribes note that the historical context for the original naming of Pocatello High School and the new town site was soon after the removal of Shoshone and Bannock people as landowners within the original Fort Hall Reservation. Once the reduction of the Fort Hall Reservation was accomplished through an act of Congress, the squatters who lived within the reservation boundaries legalized their illegal businesses, churches, and homesteads in the new town of Pocatello. The initial effort was to memorialize Indians along with the name of the city of Pocatello for the Shoshone leader of Chief Pocatello. Pocatello High School has a history of inappropriate use of tribal cultural items such as war bonnets, dances, and traditions. Back in the 70s, American Indian movement protested the Pocatello High School's use of the Indian name and mascot, the Oski Owl, was a cartoonish figure associated with the Pocatello Indians, but was thankfully retired. The Indianettes were reportedly retired at the same time, but we have seen recent reports of continuing activity on YouTube and recent reports from the Shoshone-Bannock tribal students who are now attending Pocatello High School, who were and are offended from the Pocatello High School assemblies where the Indianettes performed. In fact, Pocatello High School Indianettes Facebook page clearly reveals the ongoing misappropriation of Native American clothing, dance routines, items such as arrows and feathers, and videos at official school assemblies. The Fort Hall Business Council is obligated to protect the health, welfare, and safety of tribal members, and we have encountered physical, verbal threats, harassment, and bullying to our young people at sporting events. Our 2019 position paper on racism and mascots in Idaho schools clearly states our opposition to racial misappropriation for school mascots in Idaho. Through the time the Pocatello High School has used the Indian name, the school board has made no effort to require education to the students about tribal history, tribal government, Shoshone or Bannock language, or offer any specific classroom instruction about Shoshone-Bannock tribes or of the people. Thus, the result is a skewed education of the Shoshone and Bannock people, the tribes of regional tribal history. A major misperception of the Pocatello community is that they are honoring the Native Americans and that all Indians came in and set up teepees inside and shared many of their traditions with us. While historically there has been a general acceptance of this type of behavior, that is no longer the situation. It is time for change. The tribes see this as an opportunity to encourage open communication with the Pocatello School Board, school administrators, and the community on how more accurate education, including offering Shoshone and Bannock language classes to tribal members who are attending Pocatello School District, offering tribal government classes, a traditional Native American arts class, and tribal history classes. We invite the school board to come talk to the Fort Hall Business Council and engage in positive discussions on how to bridge that racial divide and promote more open and honest communication between the community of Pocatello and the reservation community. Thank you. Kevin Hallinan, Vice Chairman, Fort Hall Business Council, Shoshone-Bannock Tribes.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. One more, Brenda Jester?
I'll pass.
You pass, you've done, okay, give it one more chance, that's all.
Thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate it.
yep, okay.
It's been said.
Now, that concludes that. Hey, I think we all want to talk about this timeline and input. What are you guys feeling?
Well, so Doug, is your suggestion just to put this on next week's agenda or to follow the outline given here today?
So it would be both, Mrs. Crainer. There would be an opportunity for the board to take any action that you would see fit, or or adopt a timeline, or to modify the timeline.
Okay, I thought we weren't taking action today.
Not today, excuse me.
week.
Next, when you ask me about next week, it's
For
for
next
next week.
week.
Uh-huh, yes.
Okay.
Any
I
more
think
to add?
Mrs. Delanis makes an excellent point, and we're living in a time when we have to address the kinds of things that have been just assumed to be okay, that are racist, and this is no longer okay.
Well, when I read Lisa's letter last Friday, 2 words really stuck out to me. I can't remember the second one. Help me out, Lisa. It was intent
Impact.
and impact. And I truly believe that this community's intent for all those people who have gone to Pocatello High School and everything has been to honor our heritage, and to honor the history, around. And I think most of the people, I think that's why the community's having a hard time, because I think their intent has always been to honor this, and now they see this history, being called racist and everything. But you're exactly right, the impact has been different. I was visiting with my son, who's in a public relations position in another place, and he says, well, if the name of your mascot at your school was Crainer, and you went to all these other events and they said, hang the Craners or scalp the Craners, he said, would that have an impact on you, as a person, and how would you feel about that, hearing that all the time? And so to put it personally to me, I could understand the comments better and how our Native American American population must feel by continually hearing this, and so, so you can, I think partly what we need to try to do, though, is to help educate our community to see that it's time, like Lisa said, like Mrs. Delona said, it's time maybe that this happens, and we've seen it happening all around the country, for several years, and my hope was it wouldn't happen here till I was off the board. That was my real hope. And it's the timing of it is hard because of all the issues we've been going through with the pandemic and with things like that. I do take issue with the fact that we have been planning this and have had our minds made up for a long time. That's not true for the board. That we have not discussed this, until this has just come to our attention. Really, those that went to the meeting last Friday, was it?
I learned about it Thursday.
Thursday.
But most people heard on Friday.
And then the rest of the board heard it on Friday. So we don't get together and discuss it all, and it has been presented for us here today, like you have. So to say our minds have all been made up and this is the way it's going to be isn't fair to this board, because I, for one, can testify that is not true. That has not occurred, and I appreciate we got a list of comments that have come in from Courtney Fisher, our community relations person, and she has listed all of these that have come. She opened it up in comment, and these have come on emails. I think these have all been on emails. And I'm trying to find the page where she said how many were here, and that, does somebody have
Right
that?
at the top.
I've
here.
mixed mine all up.
Right here.
It's
Okay,
in favor of changing 50 and against 27, and general questions were 2.
yeah. So
Mrs.
there were
Gippard, if you could repeat that,
Yes.
I think it was a
Really
little
loud.
soft.
79
Okay,
total.
I was answering her, but in favor of changing the mascot, 50 letters came. Against changing the mascot, 27 letters came. And there were some questions without a side being taken, and that's 2.
So that's what we got this today, and we were reading some before the meeting, and we will go home and continue to read that, but I think there have been some points really well taken that this does need to be put on our agenda for next week to discuss, and whether or not to do it in the timeline that is proposed.
We can
I think that's pretty fast, but,
That's our call next week.
yeah, that's our call next week, so.
I would agree we should go over these emails and then think about it and come up with our plan next week, a regular board meeting.
Jim?
I mean-
Kick something in?
No, I'm good. I'll just think
Next-
about it till next week, and then
Next
we'll
week?
make
Okay.
a proposal.
And we'll look at the suggestions that were just given to us today, and we can,
If we're still getting a lot of comments in first of next week, though, I really think that we're gonna postpone this thing. I'd like to give everyone a chance to speak,
and
even though can't come here. Can't be here that long, but anyway, we'll read them all.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, it's important.
and this is, this is gonna be hard on our community, you know?
But they all should be able to speak.
Yeah, we need to hear some of what they say. I mean, we can't get in this 6-month debate over this. It's not healthy for anybody.
It's not
and,
a debate.
You know, but it's important.
Okay? Any more comment?
No.
Okay. This meeting